Hello, and welcome to Los Angeles Waterkeeper's Clean Water Activist Series. This is part 4 out of 4, Campaigning for Clean Water. I'm Ben Harris, LA Waterkeeper's staff attorney. If you have any questions during the presentation, please place them in the chat, and we will answer any questions received at the conclusion of the presentation. Let's get into it. We've reached the end of this series, and over the last 3 presentations, we've answered the questions. Give it a second. So we've reached the end of this series, and over the last 3 presentations, we've answered the following questions. Who advocates for change? What do we advocate for? Why do we advocate? Now let's dive into how LA Waterkeeper advocates for our clean waterways in our lifetime here in Los Angeles, and I'll go over how you can help. Next slide, please. A key part of the how is the Clean Water Act. A brief history of the Clean Water Act. Before it was passed, most sewage in the US was dumped directly into rivers and lakes. There was no regulation of stormwater either, which is the #1 source of pollution in Los Angeles and other heavily urbanized areas. The Clean Water Act was adopted in 1972 as the primary law to regulate surface water quality throughout the country. The Act's stated objective is to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of our nation's waters. Let's take a quick look at how the Act operates. First, the Act makes it illegal for anyone to discharge any pollutant into waters of the United States without a permit. Permits are designed to ensure that dischargers install the best practicable control technology, or BPT, or the best available technology, or BAT, for certain pollutants. Once the permit is issued, it serves as the set of rules that apply to the discharger. In other words, violating the permit is a violation of the Clean Water Act. Second, the Act employs something called cooperative federalism. Rather than having the federal government regulate everything itself, the Act gives states a major role in implementing the Act's requirements within their jurisdictions. States are tasked with developing water quality standards for their water bodies, which will be discussed further in the following slides. States also must maintain lists of impaired water bodies not meeting those standards and monitor water bodies to update data on water quality and report that data to the US Environmental Protection Agency every 2 years. This will help the EPA make findings and assess progress toward achieving water quality standards. Third, the Act contains a citizen suit provision that empowers third parties, including members of the public, to sue people or companies that violate the Act's discharge prohibition or the terms of a discharge permit. Federal and state governments rarely bring enforcement actions themselves and rely heavily on citizen suits from organizations like LA Waterkeeper to achieve the Clean Water Act's goals. Next slide, please. Now let's look at the Porter-Cologne Water Quality Control Act. Along with the Clean Water Act, LA Keeper works with the Porter-Cologne Act, which is California's primary water quality law. We briefly introduced this in part 2 presentation on Intro to Advocacy, but to recap, it is California's law that establishes an administrative structure for water quality regulation and implements provisions of the Clean Water Act. The Porter-Cologne Act is implemented and enforced by the State Water Quality Control Board, the State Water Resources Control Board, and here in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. And who is on the Los Angeles Regional Water Board? Let's meet our board members. The Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board is one of 9 regional boards statewide. The 9 regional boards develop and adopt regional water quality control plans, also known as basin plans, throughout the state. The Los Angeles Regional Water Board protects ground and surface water quality in the Los Angeles region, including the coastal watersheds of Los Angeles and Ventura counties, including very small portions of Kern and Santa Barbara counties. Along with the State Water Board, regional boards issue permits for water dischargers within their jurisdiction. The regional board members on the Los Angeles Regional Board are depicted here. Regional board members are supported by staff that draft permits, offer recommendations, and make administrative decisions not requiring board approval. LA Waterkeeper works hard to maintain good relationships with board members, whether we consider them to be allies or not. It is important to have good standing with board members and staff to be able to influence proposals and decision-making on the board. Next slide, please. The work of the Regional Water Board is to establish clean water standards throughout Los Angeles to achieve clean waterways within our lifetime. These standards include, first, basin plans, which identify beneficial uses for water bodies in LA and Ventura counties. Beneficial uses can include habitat for certain species, as well as contact and non-contact recreation like swimming, kayaking, or fishing. Basin plans also establish water quality objectives for those water bodies that are designed to support the beneficial uses. Basin plans are updated every 3 years after a triennial review of the regional board's priorities during that term. This review is an opportunity for advocacy. Second, total maximum daily loads, also called TMDLs, which are the maximum amount of a pollutant that the water body can receive each day from all combined sources. TMDLs, when enacted for a specific water body, are designed to reduce the concentration of pollutants in that water body over time and bring it back to health. TMDLs include waste load allocations, which set specific pollution limits across different categories of dischargers for how much of a pollutant can be discharged from those individual sources. TMDLs also include monitoring and sampling requirements for dischargers and responsible local governments to track progress toward achieving the TMDL's goals. Currently, there are 210 impaired water body segments subject to TMDLs within the regional board's jurisdiction. The third aspect is National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits, or NPDES permits, which are the permits required under the Clean Water Act for any discharges of pollutants. These permits are supposed to be renewed every 5 years, which is another opportunity for advocacy. Permit requirements must be consistent with the Basin Plan and TMDLs to ensure permitted discharges are not causing or contributing to exceedances of water quality objectives. The regional board issues permits for a variety of dischargers, including energy generation facilities, certain large industrial compounds like the Santa Susana Field Lab, wastewater treatment plants, and urban runoff from municipal separate storm sewer systems, or MS4 systems, operated by municipalities. Next slide, please. While these water standards are meant to ensure clean waterways, over the years, we have seen the regional board fail to adopt sufficiently strict standards and not enforce standards when they are violated, including for chronic sewage spills, which is something that has plagued the Los Angeles area for many decades. While LA County has seen great strides recently in sewage spill reductions, 42 million gallons of sewage still entered LA waterways in the past 15 years. More than half of the total was spilled in 2021 alone. Even though sewage spills are a violation of the Clean Water Act, the board often reduces civil penalties to less meaningful amounts, then forgives a significant portion of penalties if the responsible sewage agency makes upgrades to its infrastructure, which is something that the agency should have already been doing. With TMDLs, the board has actually weakened several important TMDLs and continues to push out compliance deadlines at the request of permittees. For example, through an inaccurate and questionable scientific methodology, several years ago, the regional board relaxed metal standards in the LA River. Now, some dischargers are authorized to discharge over 9 times the amount of copper compared to baseline amounts, even though the LA River is still impaired for copper. Or how about in spring 2021, when the regional board extended deadlines on a variety of TMDLs in the Los Angeles area? This was done after many permittees claimed these extensions were necessary due to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, despite the fact that these dischargers were nowhere close to complying with the original deadline before that. Next slide, please. But wait, unfortunately, there's more. The regional board has rolled back various permit requirements. When permits are up for renewal every 5 years, it is an opportunity for the regional board to learn from past mistakes and loopholes and make for an even stronger permit to ensure that we are the right path toward achieving clean water. However, in response to political pressure from dischargers, permits are instead weakened frequently in their next iteration. In 2012 and 2021, the regional board included a safe harbors provision in the MS4 permit, which regulates urban runoff throughout Los Angeles. This safe harbor provision allows for permittees to be protected from enforcement for failing to meet water quality standards while supposedly working on long-term infrastructure projects to capture stormwater and prevent runoff. But because they are not accountable for violating water quality standards in the meantime, permittees do not have the incentive to work quickly on these projects, so almost all of them are well behind their targets. And while a huge part of the board's responsibilities is enforcement, we have seen little to no enforcement actions against dischargers that violate their permits. Instead, the regional board issues something called timed schedule orders, or TSOs. These TSOs grant permittees more time to comply with past deadlines with some additional board oversight, but the TSOs prevent the discharger from being held accountable for their violations. The regional board hands out TSOs like candy to most permittees that request them, and even actively encourages some permittees to apply for TSOs instead of actively pursuing these violators. Next slide, please. So, how do we address and fix these issues? As an organization, LA Waterkeeper must take advantage of the new board constitution to ensure that the agency fulfills its mission to achieve clean water as soon as possible. First, we can push the board to set and adopt strong discharge limits in TMDLs that require permittees to install the most effective pollution control technology that is feasible. Second, we can push the board to maintain permit and TMDL requirements rather than rolling back or extending compliance timelines through TMDL extensions or TSOs. Third, we can push the board to enforce its strong water standards and hold dischargers that violate permits accountable to remedy the harm that their discharges have caused. Next slide, please. And here's how you can help us. There are several anticipated future opportunities for advocacy that we believe you can be of assistance. First, there will be a basin plan triennial review in 2022 to 2023. Please help us advocate for the board to adopt biological criteria that ensure water quality in many important waterways is sufficient to support biologically healthy water bodies. And you can help us advocate for the regional board to identify concrete channels as an impairment to support concrete removal and renaturalizing local rivers and creeks, like the LA River, which will be discussed later in this presentation. Also, you can help us advance tribal beneficial uses. We are planning to advocate for the regional board to designate water bodies with historical tribal cultural uses in the most inclusive manner possible, in close coordination with tribal members and tribal groups, and to create strong water quality objectives to support those cultural uses. Third, you can help us with our state water board advocacy. Help us engage with the state board on certain statewide permits that have strong and significant effects in the LA area, in particular an upcoming Phase 2 MS4 permit that would regulate school discharges. Next slide, please. Now I'll shift gears a little bit and jump to our work toward greening the LA County area. Next slide, please. As we've mentioned in these presentations before, LA County is massive. In fact, it's one of the nation's biggest counties, with over 10 million residents, 88 incorporated cities, and encompassing more than 4,000 square miles. The County of Los Angeles is governed by a 5-member board of supervisors, which includes Hilda Solis, Holly Mitchell, Sheila Kuhl, Janice Hahn, and Catherine Barger. The board makes decisions that affect unincorporated areas in the county, as well as incorporated cities, and the county board also manages the county's $28 billion budget. Next slide, please. One of the most important inland waterways in LA County is the Los Angeles River. The LA River traverses 51 miles from its headwater in the valley to the ocean, weaving through the region's diverse inland and coastal communities. Following several devastating floods in the 1930s, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers spent 40 years channelizing the river in an attempt to control it and prevent flooding. Today, many agencies and municipalities have some role in governing the LA River, But perhaps the two most important are the LA County Flood Control District, which is governed by the County Board of Supervisors as a separate entity, and the Army Corps of Engineers, which is a federal agency. Some natural sections of the LA River do remain and are not channelized. Thanks to the advocacy of local organizations, volunteers, and activists, and key investments by the City of LA and the Army Corps of Engineers, nature is reemerging. These areas serve as vital water filtering, carbon sequestering habitats that bolster biodiversity and provide millions of people access to nature in their backyards. Next slide, please. While the county is progressive on so many social issues, the county is still not thinking holistically on how to achieve water security and climate resilience throughout the region in an equitable manner. Instead, the County Board of Supervisors and county agencies continue to prioritize business as usual, such as gray infrastructure projects with lots of cement and concrete, over innovative, bold actions and projects such as nature-based solutions. A primary example is the LA River Master Plan update, which I will talk about on the next slide. The LA River Master Plan is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to develop a bold vision and even bolder action for the LA River and create a unifying plan across the 19 cities adjacent to the river with a clear vision for future nature-based LA River projects. The county has been working to update the master plan for the last couple years, but instead of a unifying plan to green the river, the county is pushing a new master plan update that is overly reliant on concrete and other outdated approaches and denies communities natural climate solutions that could ameliorate extreme climate impacts. Adding injury to insult, the county has not been transparent with the general public about its plans for the master plan or its objectives for future river projects, which will likely be platform parks, as contemplated and designed by architect Frank Gehry. These platform parks would cap significant stretches of the river with even more concrete and then build a green park on top of that concrete at enormous expense to LA County residents and at irredeemable harm to the LA River. Simultaneously, the cities of LA, Glendale, and Burbank are all embarking on significant wastewater recycling projects that would reduce the flow of water into the river. If these projects are done in a piecemeal fashion without proper planning from a holistic perspective, there might not be much water left for the river as habitat for plants and animals. And now, thanks to inadequate management, climate change, and pollution, the Los Angeles River has been named by American Rivers as one of America's most endangered rivers of 2022. You can read more about this listing on americanrivers.org. Next slide, please. Shifting gears. Managing water in LA County is also very complicated. The county is sustained by a complex network of natural and engineered water systems that work collectively to meet the needs of our communities and the environment. With over 200 water supply, wastewater treatment, flood control, and land management agencies, collaboration on a regional scale is critical to facilitating the resilience and sustainability of this shared resource. With the climate crisis ever worsening, stressing our already scarce and fragile water resources, the county and water agencies throughout the county are working collaboratively with each other and community stakeholders to develop integrated programs and projects that generate innovative solutions to complex water problems. The LA County Water Plan is an opportunity to think holistically and regionally about our water resources, fostering collaboration among stormwater, potable water, and recycled water stakeholders to identify opportunities for integrated solutions. But so far, the county has ignored recommendations from nonprofit organizations and community members about how to enhance local water supplies in the most green and equitable manner, with the least amount of added gray infrastructure and the maximum use of nature-based solutions. As with the LA River, the county seems insistent on following a business as usual path instead of taking bold climate action for climate resilience. Next slide, please. A third element of the county's work on local water supply is the Safe Clean Water Program. This program was passed in LA County under Measure W in 2018, and it provides $280 million annually for multiple benefit projects that green communities and offer other community services while simultaneously capturing and treating stormwater that can then be reused as a resource. This program has the capacity to elevate the county into a powerhouse in capturing and reusing stormwater, lessening our dependency on imported water and simultaneously reducing polluted stormwater discharges into our local waterways. However, the county and other municipal governments view the Safe Clean Water Program more as a way to comply with the MS4 permit and to try to push forward gray infrastructure projects to capture stormwater without prioritizing community needs or advancing multi-benefit projects. Next slide, please. Here's how you can help. With such great opportunities to make LA County climate resilient, it is important to push the county to pursue green, nature-based solutions for all projects. For the master plan, help us hold LA County responsible to adopt the LA River Master Plan Update or a successor plan that charts a course to restore the entirety of the river to a natural state through concrete removal. For individual river projects, help us oppose any proposed platform projects or other gray infrastructure projects or developments that would further encase the river and its floodplain in concrete, while supporting and uplifting river projects that remove concrete and bring back nature and green space. Transparency. Help us ensure the county updates the public regularly about LA River plans and projects and allow more opportunities for public input, which have been sorely lacking in the county's past practices. And finally, strategy. Help us make public comments at regular LA County board meetings, direct contact with board members and their aides by email or phone, and by providing public comments in the California Environmental Quality Act process for individual river projects once they are proposed. Next slide, please. Now let's jump into our work toward enhancing our local water supplies in Los Angeles. Next slide, please. The greater Los Angeles County water supply is made up of several sources. About 62% of our local water is imported from various places, including the State Water Project, including canals, open pipes, and aqueducts that traverse 705 miles and sources water from the Sierra Nevada mountain range. The Colorado River Aqueduct, which is about 242 miles long, that sources water from the Colorado River, another river that was listed as endangered on American Rivers Most Endangered Rivers list of 2022. And also the Los Angeles Aqueduct, 233 miles long, that sources water from Mono Basin and Owens Valley. Los Angeles also gets about 30% of its water supply from local groundwater, much of which is contaminated or has other constituents of concern due to past industrial practices in the area. And only right now about 1% of our local water supply comes from local surface water and recycled water, sourced either from the Los Angeles River or San Gabriel River watersheds. Next slide, please. One of the biggest water suppliers in the region is the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, also called MWD. MWD is a body made up of 26 cities and water districts that provide drinking water to nearly 19 million people in parts of Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura counties. MWD was founded in 1926 by state law and grew from a fear of water shortages and the potential for the desert to reclaim the land. The district has imported water from the Colorado River since 1941, including by owning and operating the Colorado River Aqueduct, and from Northern California through the State Water Project since the early 1970s. Today, MWD is the largest single contractor of the State Water Project. While MWD is a water importer, it is a major supporter of Southern California water conservation and water recycling programs, as well as other local water management activities. Water conserved through MWD programs, which can be conservation credits, code-based conservation through MWD-sponsored legislation, building or plumbing codes or ordinances, reduced consumption from changes in water pricing, as well as pre-1990 device retrofits, ends up conserving about over 1 million acre-feet per year. In addition, MWD is helping to recycle water by about 458,000 acre-feet per year and has ensured groundwater recovery in the last fiscal year ending in 2021 by over 100,000 acre-feet. While these figures may seem impressive on paper, much more can be done. Next slide, please. MWD needs to shift to prioritize water recycling, stormwater capture, groundwater infiltration, and other ways to enhance local water supplies in a distributed manner to reduce our dependence on water imports. MWD must prioritize these local sources of water rather than investing more money into infrastructure for imports or otherwise for moving water long distances within the LA region. In 1990, the breakdown of MWD's portfolio was 33% water from the State Water Project, 27% water from the Colorado River Aqueduct, 34% water from other local supplies, and 7% conservation and recycling. Currently, MWD is aiming to hit these targets, established in 1990, by 2035. While it is great to see MWD is aiming to reduce its reliance on imported water, we still have a long way to go. Imported water uses lots of energy and therefore has a large carbon footprint and can impact the ecological communities where the water is sourced. Plus, there are hundreds of miles of infrastructure that MWD must and other agencies must repair and maintain. If we suffer a loss of an imported water supply, like through a natural disaster such as an earthquake or drought, due to ever-increasing climate change impacts, or due to politics, it could have major ramifications on the Los Angeles region's water supply. Next slide, please. Here's how you can help. LA County needs to invest in local sustainable water supplies to achieve climate resiliency. Now is the time to take advantage of new MWD leadership to transition the region from being a water importer to advancing sustainable and climate-friendly local water supplies. Help us push MWD to first adopt a climate action plan that recognizes the large carbon footprint of water imports through the State Water Project and charts a course to mitigate those impacts. Second, to adopt stringent drought requirements that push the LA region toward improved water conservation and demand management. Third, to adopt a One Water plan that prioritizes the 4R approach to local water, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, and restore, and to obtain additional funding for these projects through demand management programs and the Local Resources Program. And finally, work together with other local agencies on the regional recycled water program to improve the program's efficiency, reduce the amount of gray piping that is installed, and minimize any negative environmental impacts of wastewater recycling on a regional scale rather than a piecemeal project-by-project assessment. Next slide, please. Now that we've briefly mentioned the current issues and campaigns that LA Waterkeeper is working on, it's time to get you involved. You can sign up for action alerts and for our newsletter to ensure that you're always on the know about opportunities for public comment or action. Thank you for attending LA Waterkeeper's Clean Water Activist Series Part 4. At this time, we will be answering any questions received during the presentation. Please drop any questions you have in the chat box. Thank you for attending today's event. If you have any questions come up after you leave today, please feel free to reach out to me at the contact information listed on the slide or to Kelly or Mitzi. As a reminder, and that concludes it. Thank you.